St. Vincent's Hospital was a relic of the past, its stone walls weathered by decades of rain and neglect. The building loomed over the city like a forgotten sentinel, its windows dark and lifeless. The morgue, located in the basement, was a place of cold sterility, a world of stainless steel, fluorescent lights, and the faint hum of refrigeration units. For Dr. Evelyn Carter, it was a second home. She had spent countless nights there, performing autopsies and reviewing medical records. But one night the morgue became something far more sinister. It began with a faint sound, a soft scraping, like metal against concrete. Evelyn was alone, as she often was during the night shift. The hospital staff avoided the morgue after dark, whispering about strange noises and flickering lights. Evelyn dismissed their superstitions, but that night, she couldn't ignore the sound. It was coming from the wall of refrigeration units, where the bodies were stored. She stood, her chair scraping against the floor, and grabbed her flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness as she approached the units. The scraping stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence. She opened the first unit, revealing the body of an elderly woman who had passed away earlier that day. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but as she closed the unit, she felt it, a cold breath on the back of her neck. She spun around, her flashlight beam sweeping the room. The morgue was empty, but the air felt heavier, as if something unseen was watching her. The scraping started again, this time from the far end of the morgue. Evelyn followed the sound, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous room. As she reached the last refrigeration unit, the door creaked open on its own. Inside was the body of a young man who had died in a car accident. His face was pale, his eyes closed, but his lips were moving. Evelyn froze, her breath catching in her throat. The man's lips parted, and a voice, deep and guttural, spoke. "You shouldn't be here." She stumbled backward, dropping her flashlight. The room plunged into darkness, and the scraping sound returned, louder and more frantic. She fumbled for the light switch, but when the fluorescent lights flickered on, the morgue was empty. The refrigeration units were all closed and the bodies were still. Evelyn tried to convince herself it was fatigue, but the incident haunted her. Over the next few nights, strange things began to happen. The temperature in the morgue would drop suddenly, her breath visible in the cold air. The scraping sound returned, always coming from the refrigeration units. And then there were the shadows. Dark, shapeless forms that moved just out of sight. Laura reported the incident, but no one believed her. The blood was cleaned up and the incident was dismissed as a prank. But Laura knew better. She started seeing the man everywhere, in the hallways, in the break room, even in her dreams. His hollow eyes followed her, and his cold breath whispered in her ear, "I'm still here." One night, Laura decided to confront him. She stayed late, determined to uncover the truth. As the hours passed, the hospital grew quieter, the air heavier. Around 3 a.m., she heard footsteps outside room 307. She opened the door and found the man standing there, his face pale and his eyes black. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The man smiled, his lips stretching into a grotesque grin. "I'm the one they forgot," he said, his voice echoing as if it came from far away. "I died here, long ago, but they never let me leave." Laura backed away, but the man stepped closer, his movements jerky and unnatural. The lights flickered and the room grew colder. She felt a hand on her shoulder, cold and bony, and she screamed. When the lights came back on, the man was gone. Laura quit the hospital soon after, but the phantom patient never left her. To this day, she avoids hospitals, especially at night, because she knows he's still there, waiting. Mercy General Hospital was a bustling hub of activity during the day, but at night, it became a labyrinth of empty hallways and flickering lights. Nurse Laura had worked the night shift for years, but nothing could have prepared her for the night she encountered the phantom patient. It began with a code blue in the emergency room. A man in his 40s was wheeled in by paramedics, his forehead bleeding from a deep gash. He was disoriented and unresponsive, his skin ice cold and his pulse faint. The paramedics had found him wandering the streets, muttering incoherently. With no identification, he was labeled John Doe. Laura tended to his wound, but something about him unnerved her. His eyes were hollow, his gaze fixed on something only he could see. When she asked him his name, he didn't respond. After stitching his wound, she wheeled him to room 307, a small, windowless room at the end of the hall. Over the next few hours, Laura checked on him periodically, but he never spoke or moved. Around 3 a.m., she went to administer his medication, but when she entered the room, he was gone. The bed was empty, the sheets neatly tucked. She searched the floor, but there was no sign of him. The security cameras showed nothing. No one had entered or left the room. Confused and shaken, Laura returned to the room and found something even more unsettling. On the bed, where the man had been lying, was a pool of dark, congealed blood. And on the wall, written in what looked like the same blood, were the words, "I'm still here." One night, Evelyn decided to investigate. She stayed late, determined to uncover the source of the disturbances. As the hours passed, the morgue grew colder, the air thick with an unshakable dread. Around 3 a.m., the lights flickered and went out. Evelyn's flashlight died, plunging her into complete darkness. The scraping sound began again, louder and more insistent. She felt something brush against her arm, a cold, bony hand. She screamed, but no sound came out. The refrigeration units began to open one by one, their doors creaking on rusty hinges. The bodies inside sat up, their hollow eyes fixed on her. The young man from the car accident stepped out of his unit, his movements jerky and unnatural. "You shouldn't be here," he repeated, his voice echoing in the darkness. Evelyn ran, her heart pounding in her chest. She stumbled up the stairs, the sound of scraping and laughter following her. When she reached the main floor, the lights were on, and the hospital was quiet. She collapsed in the hallway, her colleagues rushing to her aid. She never returned to the morgue. The hospital administration dismissed her claims as stress-induced hallucinations. But Evelyn knew the truth. The morgue was haunted, and whatever lurked there had marked her. To this day, she avoids hospitals, especially at night, because she knows the shadows are waiting. The pediatric ward of St. Luke's Hospital was a place of hope during the day, but at night it became a realm of shadows and whispers. Nurse Sarah had always loved working with children, but the night shift was different. The ward was quieter, the atmosphere heavier, and the laughter of children took on an eerie quality. One night, Sarah was making her rounds when she heard it, a child's laughter coming from the playroom at the end of the hall. The playroom was supposed to be locked at night, but the door was slightly ajar. She approached cautiously, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. Inside, the room was empty, but the toys were moving. A rocking horse swayed back and forth, its wooden frame creaking. A jack-in-the-box turned itself, the eerie melody of "Pop Goes the Weasel" playing in slow motion. Sarah's heart raced as she stepped further into the room. "Hello?" she called, her voice trembling. The laughter stopped, replaced by a deafening silence. Then, from the corner of the room, a small figure emerged. It was a little girl, no older than 6, wearing a tattered hospital gown. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were black voids. "Will you play with me?" the girl asked, her voice echoing as if it came from far away. Sarah backed toward the door, but it slammed shut behind her. The lights flickered, and the room grew colder. The girl stepped closer, her feet not touching the ground. "You shouldn't be here," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. The girl tilted her head, her expression shifting from innocent to menacing. "But I live here," she said, her voice now a guttural growl. Sarah screamed, and the lights went out. When they came back on, the room was empty, the toys still and silent. She ran to the nurse's station, but no one believed her. The playroom was locked, they said, and had been all night. But Sarah knew what she saw. She started hearing the laughter every night, always coming from the playroom. She tried to avoid it, but the sound followed her, growing louder and more insistent. Eventually, she couldn't take it anymore and quit the hospital. Years later, she learned the truth. Decades ago, a little girl had died in the pediatric ward after being abandoned by her family. Her spirit was said to haunt the ward, searching for someone to play with. Sarah never returned to St. Luke's, but she still hears the laughter sometimes late at night when the world is quiet.